the emotions, and especially the concept of emotions and passions as understood by Chinese medicine. And this is a second part in a series of 6 parts where we are trying to explore the hidden roots of disease, and especially the relation between mind and body, the sort of the concept of psychosomatics seen from a Chinese perspective. Now, once again, as a reminder, Chinese, ever since the Sung Dynasty, have clearly classified the causative factors of disease into 3 parts: external, internal, and mixed parts. External being the climates, and the internal parts they have specified to be the emotions. Now, obviously, the term emotion is maybe sometimes understood very limitingly. Emotions actually are issued from our perspectives and our mind frames. Therefore, it should be actually mentioned that emotions and sort of belief systems. So this is actually what we will be exploring in all these webinars, is to understand the mechanisms of belief systems and how we can work with it in our daily practice. So in this part, we are going to sort of dive into the world of emotions, which is always very interesting in in Chinese medicine. But also a small, I would like to also remind us of the 3rd causative factors, which are, the Chinese have sort of grouped them into neither external nor internal, or half external, half internal, or mixed causes, etc., in which actually we find very, very important things, aspects such as heredity, of course, lifestyle, which includes exercise, food, and sleep. It's very important. And other causes which are more in relation to the world we live in, and maybe toxins, maybe sort of infections, etc., etc. And including also an area where they refer to as ghosts, gui, spirits, harmful spirits, which is maybe a leftover of the ancient beliefs, but also today, actually, I find it's very, very relevant in modern psychotherapy, especially when we are working with Chinese medicine. This topic, of course, we will be covering it. We have already mentioned it last time, but we will cover it in the following webinars. So let's see, what are actually emotions? Emotions are the human reactions to outer changes or to the outer world. And it can be said that emotions are necessary for survival. So they have a context of protection, of course. And this actually brings us directly to what we consider to be the basic instincts that we have in common with animals and other life forms. So it can be broken down that a perception of a particular outer stimulus is going to produce a physiological response, which means there's going to be a reaction, a physiological reaction in the form of a chemical release or electric release. And this release in the body is going to be perceived as an emotion. So this is actually the feeling that we have in the body is expressed as an emotion. And now coming back to this concept of basic instincts, the instincts are there as the means of protection. And we know that the instincts are transmitted through inheritance. And this is in all life forms. In particular, the more sort of advanced a life form, the more sophisticated the type of instinct. And of course, in humans, it has taken the most sophisticated aspect, manifesting as a variety of emotions. We see that the instincts are there for survival. Now, the first, we can relate these instincts to the 5 sections of the psyche, the way we explored them last time in the last webinar, that the basic instincts, like the survival instinct, is attributed to this part or section of the psyche, which is the Shen. Now, this we could refer to or call it passion for life, to distinguish it from the other aspect of the survival instinct, which is the will to live. And this one is represented by Qi, which is residing in the kidney. To differentiate between the two, we explored this last time, but it's important again to underline that Shen represents the basic life instinct, and that all the energies of the human are oriented to sustain this passion for life. And this passion for life is one of the only passions which are non-pathological. We'll see later when we speak about the 7 passions that the only passion which is considered normal is a passion for life. Any other passion, when it's obviously exaggerated, becomes harmful. Now, this passion for life, we find it in all life forms, and especially this will to live, survival, and perpetuation. We find it even in plants, that every effort is made for the species to continue. In humans, of course, this takes a form of continuation in life in the form of sort of gestation and giving birth and sustaining the lineage. But between the two, passion for life and will to live will sort of define the basic program of the body. And therefore, all our other instincts, especially emotions, are going to be evolving and centered on this central axis. And when we see that the Shen residing in the heart and belonging to the fire element, and Qi, which is residing in the kidney, belonging to the water element, that the Chinese have mentioned that the central axis of the body is the Shaolin axis, which means the axis of fire and water, or rather water and fire, because life starts in water. So we see that actually everything else evolves, life evolves around this basic survival instinct. Then we have the term Po that we have explored. It's usually related to as the sort of an animal spirit, and it's the corporeal soul, as translated by Giovanni Macioccia. It obviously relates to the physical body, and it represents the instinct of protection. Now, in animals, it takes the form for the animal to find a place to hide, to burrow, to nest, to sort of protect itself physically from the environment and from predators. In humans, it takes the form, of course, of building dwellings, the sort of protective environments, and also, very importantly, to plan for the future. We see that in some animals, for example, we have squirrels around, and we see that in autumn, they're very busy gathering what they can to hide it for the winter season. Many animals have this instinct of providing and preparing the winter, where food is scarce. And this is the basic instinct of preparing for the future. So the humans, Po will be obviously very closely related to the Wei Qi, which is the defensive mechanism of the body, and therefore also to sort of planning for the future, projecting into the future. And this aspect also we will be finding a pathological aspect of Po. We find it in many types of allergies which are basically overreactiveness of the defensive mechanism, or the opposite, which is a loss of instinct of protection. And we will be exploring it today with certain emotions which may cause that, in which then the person actually stops protecting themselves. They give up, in a sense. The next instinct will be Hun, or related rather to Hun, And this is an instinct which basically is the base of fight and flight reactions. When facing a potential danger, the animal appreciates or evaluates the degree of danger, and also in relation to their capacity to stand up to this situation, and then deciding on which is the best choice is to either fight or run away. And obviously, Hun, which is the ethereal spirit residing in the liver, and we know that the liver on one aspect is called the general of the army, which is in charge of directing the Wei Qi, the protective energies, and on the other side, it's also in charge of maintaining the muscles. And through muscles, we also understand mobility. So therefore, the fight or flight instinct, which is again very much rooted in the survival instinct, will manifest itself through the functions and offices of Hun. And finally, Yi, which is the spirit which is residing in the earth, in the spleen. And it's the caring instinct. And we see that this instinct actually is developing more in the sort of more advanced life forms or animals. In fish and reptiles, they lay their eggs and they leave. Whereas in the higher life forms, they give birth and they take care of their offsprings for a certain time. Obviously, in humans, this goes even to extremes where sometimes the offspring is still at home at the age of 20. But that's a unusual situation. But we can see that the caring and nesting instinct also brings the life form, I would like to say the animal, to creating societies. So animals which are social animals and they have social structures, the social structure is basically reflecting an elaboration of this caring and nesting. And we know that in these social structures, the animals support each other, both for hunting or for also if an animal dies, the others are going to take care of the small ones, of the offsprings, so that the lineage continues. Obviously, in humans, this is the sort of the source of our civilization and how people sort of gather together and they live together. So the basis of our societies are rooted in this instinct of Yi, which is caring and nesting. This in humans also manifests as in a form of love, which is the mother's love for the child, which is an unconditional love. We'll be discussing actually different types of love and caring in humans, and especially touching. Now, the sense of touching they have discovered is absolutely fundamental for the development of the child. And they have even evaluated that a child who is touched and cared for learns to speak sooner than children who have been simply fed but not cared for. And this they have observed. It's very interesting, the relation there is, that the human child already feels this aspect of caring, and it's inborn in us. Now, at this point, I would like to add something interesting. When I studied Chinese medicine, our teachers told us that the difference between human and animal is that the human has emotions and animals don't. And so we went on accepting this interpretation. Especially there was this, if you recall, the ancient sort of pictogram. It's not even an ideogram, it's a pictogram of the human being before the Ren, which was a simple representation of a human being from the profile. In the ancient pictograms, they represented sort of a human being with the two legs which were standing on the ground, the two arms were raised to the sky, an open head, and a square in the middle representing the trunk. And in the lower part, there was a line which obviously with a triangle downwards, which was representing the genitals and the sexual energy, and 3 lines crossing it. Symbolically, this part, which is the lower part, represents mobility, the legs, the triple warmer, energy transformation, and the sexual energy representing reproduction. This we have, humans and animals, we have in common. But then the square in the middle was explained to be the human level, and that it was special in humans, and it represented the emotions in their duality. And that made the difference with animals. And of course, the upper part, the arms open to the sky, represented the mental functions. And then the open head with the top was open was the spiritual dimension of the human being. This was explained to us that the human aspect was the fact of having emotions. Now, later, living with animals, I realized that this was not true. The pets we had clearly their emotions. So I was sort of a bit surprised. And once I asked at that time, now for the past 20 years, we have had Jeffrey Ewan coming to Switzerland every year and lecturing for us. And during one of those lectures, I asked him the question, do animals have emotions? And he said, actually, animals who are in contact with humans, they develop a pericardium, a symbol, which means that by developing the symbol, they also develop some form of rudimentary emotions, which are different from animals in the wild. Now, I have watched a lot of documentaries on animals in the wild, and I have my own doubts about it. I think animals do have emotions. Maybe they are very rudimentary compared to our emotions, but at this stage, I am I don't have a very clear answer to that. But definitely our pets, the cats especially, or even dogs we had, definitely they have their emotions. So continuing with this topic, basically the will to live, as we saw, is the root and the basis of our emotional structures. And the Chinese represent this as the orientation of all the human life forces is the will to live and to fulfill one's destiny.